Welcome to the Student Ministry Matters podcast. We want to encourage, equip, and connect those with a passion to impact the next generation for Jesus Christ. Student ministry can be a lonely place. You might even feel like you're the only one in your church or community that cares about students. Well, know this, you're not alone. People all across the country are engaging Gen Z and care deeply about the spiritual direction of these young men and women. Whether you're full-time, part-time, bivocational, or volunteer, if you have a heart for students, this is the place for you.
Welcome again to another edition of the Student Ministry Matters podcast. I'm Dan Carson, the Director of Student Ministry Matters. We're thrilled that you've chosen to download and listen as we continue the conversation about student ministry. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about books, about their value in student ministry for those of us who are in it, growing and the importance thereof, but also putting good resources in front of our students. But before we get to that, I want to thank our podcast partner, Central Baptist College of Conway. Now, if you have a student who is trying to figure out those next steps, where should they go to school? What should they do? Have them check out cbc.edu. Central Baptist College has been impacting lives for decades with a Christ-focused education. Maybe you're a student yourself. You are needing to finish up that degree in ministry and biblical studies. Central Baptist College is a great place to do that. So let me just encourage you to reach out to cbc.edu. As we talk about the value of good books in ministry, tonight on the podcast, I'm going to be sharing an interview I had with Aaron Bauer. Aaron is the event sales coordinator for 10 of those. Aaron and his wife, Jody, live in the Chicagoland area and have 5 children, ages 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15. And before working for 10 of those, Aaron served as a pastor for music. He enjoys being with his family, books, and sports. Well, Aaron, thanks for being on the podcast with us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks, Dan. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, one of the great things is having people on from other parts of the country, and to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better, I've got a couple of questions that I'd love to throw at you. The first is, I know that you're from the Chicagoland area, and I've had a chance to visit a couple of times up that way and had some of the Chicago-style pizza. So I've got to ask, where is the best place to get Chicago-style pizza?
Yeah. Okay. This is a question that you're not always going to get agreement on. So,
right.
I'm glad you're asking. But for me and my family, we are going to Lou Malnati's. That is a winner for us. Every ingredient is just about perfect. So, there's others that are good, but that's the winner for us.
Okay. Well, that was not one of the two that I expected. I think is it Gino's and Gusano's up there?
Yeah, you've probably heard of Gino's and Giordano's.
Giordano's, yeah. Okay, that's it. Well, I have some friends from that area, and they actually have their pizza shipped from Giordano's, shipped down to Arkansas so that they can have a taste of that Chicago style. But what was the name that you mentioned?
Yeah, Lou Malnati's.
Okay.
Lou Malnati's Pizzeria.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other one is in your bio. You mentioned you like sports, so I got to ask, what are your favorite sports and what are your favorite teams that you watch?
Yes, sir. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so being I'm a little bit of a transplant here in Chicagoland, and so I cheer for the Packers, Brewers, and Bucks.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
You're in harsh territory, I believe.
Enemy territory. It gets a little rough sometimes.
Well, again, Aaron, thank you so much for being here. We're all about ministry here, and so how are you serving in your local church now? I know that at one point you were a worship pastor. Now you're with 10 of those. What's that look like for you and your family serving in your local church?
Yeah, so we still have opportunities here and there to be involved in music, and I try to serve doing that whenever possible. One of the areas that we actually do that in, we've been blessed to be a part of a kind of family Sunday school where the entire family is there. And so we have a kind of a nice music time during that I've been able to participate in and be involved in.
That's great. Being a family pastor over this last decade, I've really taken a closer look at family ministry and the best ways for it to work together. And so I'm always fascinated by those type of things. Well, we're talking about books on this podcast. 10 of those is a company that we're going to hear more about as we get closer to the end of the podcast, but that's who Aaron works with. And so we want to ask some questions about books. As student ministry workers, it's real important that we spend time reading and learning and growing, and there are all sorts of ways out there. So let me ask you this first question about that area, Aaron. In a world of video and blogs and podcasts, why is it important for student ministry workers and others to build a library and to invest in books?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because there are so many voices, there are so many places that kids are getting their information from. It's great to have resources that are solid and on the shelf, a place that they can go to that's always there. And if we're building a library filled with good resources that keep to the Bible, hopefully then it becomes a trusted resource. I think blogs and videos and the like come and go so quickly. But I think there's something about a library, something about books, especially if we know it's a trusted resource, that just feels a little bit more, it kind of spans time a little bit more. And so I think it's great, even if it's just your office as a youth ministry worker, for a teenager to come in and see, these are the books, these are the influences on my life in many ways. And to be able to see that I have someone who cares for me, who cares about truth, and I can see it on his wall.
That's great. We were doing an interview a little while back with a youth pastor who had worked with college students as well, and he was sharing that his youth pastor gave him a copy of an A.W. Tozer book and said, "Here, read this." But the kid was like 12 or 13 when he got it, and I'm like, "Wow, that's kind of heavy reading." So,
yeah, but that's good reading too, though. So.
It is. It is hard to go wrong with stuff like that. But man, that's going to make a student kind of scratch their head at times. But that's good. That's great to make them do it. In a world where Christian bookstores, especially on the local level, are drying up. I mean, up here in Northwest Arkansas, we have a new Christian bookstore because Lifeway went out of business. Family Christian went out of business. A couple of local ones just faded away. And that's hard, as somebody who serves in the church, it's hard to watch that happen. But it leaves with this good question, because before you could always go in and you could ask an employee and say, "Hey, listen, I'm looking for a book in this," and you could get a response. So how do we go about picking good books now when we're in this type of environment?
Yeah, I'll answer that. But that does touch on something that we love to do, actually, at 10 of those. We love making book recommendations. So even though you're not in the store with us, we do have a chat function on our website, 10ofthose.com, and people email us all the time looking for a good book recommendation. So really, I had to fit that in there.
Oh, certainly.
Since you kind of mentioned it. But
yeah.
I mean, how do you go about picking good books today? Because you go to a website like Amazon, and you're a click away from heresy at times, unfortunately. So, what we like to say is two really main things. Does it hold to the Bible, and does it point people to Jesus? You can be listening to something that you heard on the radio, or a video that you see on YouTube, and he sounded pretty good, and his book is cheap, so maybe I should get that. But I think it really is important. It requires effort on our part to see that the author or the teacher that we're reading is making effort themselves to teach the Bible. And there are so many things out there that look like they might be Christian, even bestsellers that look like they are Christian, that maybe slap a Bible verse on something here and there, but aren't really teaching what the Bible says. And so when I say we're looking for things that hold to the Bible, that's what I mean, that they're explaining what the Bible has to say and not putting what they want to say into it. So we recommend that you ask people that you trust about what kinds of books they're reading, what kinds of books they recommend, what they think are good publishers, and that the things that you read prioritize the priorities of the Bible. And of course, we always want to say that people's reading of good books should never come at the expense of reading the Bible. So we need to know the Bible and spend a lot of time reading and studying the Bible. And if we're doing that, then that's going to help us discern how to pick good books as well.
Wow, that's fantastic, and I love that you shared with us about that chat option, being able to talk to somebody when you can't reach a staff member at your church. You can't reach the pastor. Is this good or not? And everything that I've seen come from you guys is just solid. And so I would imagine that there's a process that you go through, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a minute.
Yeah.
But picking the right books is a challenge. It was hard enough when you'd go into a Christian bookstore and try to see these shelves. But now that Amazon ends up being a source for a lot of those things, and you punch in something like church, and then boom, tons of choices. So I appreciate that. Points to the Bible and points to what God believes are the priorities in life. Well, we got to ask some more questions about building our library and thinking about those terms. So if I am looking to start my own little library, not necessarily where people can check things out, but as somebody who is in student ministry or in ministry in general, what are some books that they need to have as a part of their own library? What are some choices there, Aaron?
Sure. I always tell everybody to, especially if you're just starting out, to make sure that you have a good study Bible. A study Bible can be just a wealth of resource all in one, big solid book that can be on your desk. Usually a lot of footnotes to explain things, introductions to each book of the Bible that a lot of times in today's study Bibles are just gold. So I do recommend the ESV study Bible. The Crossway also has one called the Gospel Transformation Bible, which is very good and I think very accessible to the average person or maybe somebody starting out in youth ministry. And I really like the MacArthur Study Bible as well, just really solid notes. I'd also recommend, obviously you can go out and you can get a commentary on every book of the Bible and really dig in deep. But I recommend trying to find some sort of single volume or maybe 2-volume Bible commentary so that you're getting a good overview of things and maybe isn't digging in as deep as a commentary about an individual book, but you're getting a good overview commentary of the entire Bible. Warren Wiersbe has a 2-volume set that is very good. And then as a youth ministry person, you're going to be probably teaching from the Gospels a lot. J.C. Ryle has a very good 7-volume set on the Gospels. It's just really excellent teaching, very accessible to the everyday person. And if you're going to be, digging into those Gospels, those are very helpful. And then you're going to want something probably that just kind of gives you a general overview of the entire Bible, just to understand its entire message. So there's a book called God's Big Picture that we always recommend at 10 of those. The name of the author is escaping me. God's Big Picture by Vaughn Roberts. So that's a really good volume, just kind of taking you through and helping you to understand the storyline of the Bible. And then maybe one other, I think that a youth pastor, a youth minister, just needs to be thinking theologically, starting to stretch themselves if they haven't been doing that already. I think Knowing God by J.I. Packer is a great place to start. You mentioned A.W. Tozer. That's also really good. So those are kind of the ways that I'd start to build my library.
It's real easy for those of us in student ministry to be about doing things. And so we don't read enough as a general rule. I know there are exceptions to those that are listening right now. But as a general rule, we're like, we got to do this. We got to get this ready or this activity and so I certainly appreciate some real solid recommendations there about what we need as when we start our library. I love the ESV Study Bible is fantastic. I wholeheartedly agree with that. When we're looking at books, we also want to be thinking about our students. But Aaron, I think you may have something else you want to add there.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, in building a library, I recommend as much as you can. Obviously, we have maybe a specific topic that we really need to bone up on at some point, but to try to stay away from trendy topics as much as you can. You're going to get a lot of those books when you go to the next conference, and they'll give those kind of books to you for free. But if you're really wanting to build something that's going to last, trying to stick to good materials that you're going to be able to study from and be able to use for your teaching.
Man, that is a great word. I know that as I look through my shelf over the 30 years of ministry that I've been in, I think, okay, why did I buy that? And it was good at the time, but now it's past. And you're right. Good, solid, timeless truth is always going to be applicable. And so, well, as I mentioned, talking about students, one of the things that we're trying to do is also to get books in the hands of our students, get them reading, get them focused in on Scripture and in biblical thought. And so what would you recommend for us to share with our students?
Sure. So there's a few books that come to mind just really quickly. The first one that you may not have heard of is a book called Genuine. We actually have it at 10ofthose.com. And it's just a very interesting book that takes us through 6 teenagers in the Bible and what it means as a teenager to live for Jesus. It's very easy to get lost in so much of what the world is doing. But what does it mean to really live for Jesus? And so that's a really good place to start, I think, for teenagers. I'd recommend things that might help them learn how to dig into the Bible. So for a teenage girl, I might recommend a book called Head, Heart, Hands, which is just kind of a devotional book that takes girls through Matthew. And then on the boys' side, Dig into Matthew is another book that kind of devotionally teaches a student how to study. But then some other books that I think might be really helpful. Thoughts for Young Men by J.C. Ryle. Just really accessible to both young and old, I think. Very understandable, but everything that he put down on paper in the late 1800s is just still helpful today. So Thoughts for Young Men. Disciplines of a Godly Young Man. I know this is two guy books in a row here, but that's also very helpful if we're talking about maybe if you're wanting to disciple a teenager. And then, I encourage, you mentioned something similar to this, maybe raising the bar with your teens. I was in a youth group where our youth pastor wasn't afraid to teach us some of the deeper truths of the Bible and get into some deeper theology. And he stretched us to the level he wanted us to go. Mm-hmm. And that's so some of the other things that you think your teenagers might not be capable of. One that just came to mind earlier today was Kevin DeYoung's Taking God at His Word. It's just kind of a basic intro to the Bible, how we got it, why we can trust it. We know about its inerrancy. And books like that, Tozer, like you mentioned, why not put Soul Winner by Spurgeon in front of your teenagers and encourage them in their evangelism at school and in their neighborhood, things like that. Stretch them a little bit. So those would be some of my recommendations to get your students reading. And maybe one other, Pilgrims Progress, second most sold book in history, right? And I know that there are many who, once they've read this book, want to read it over and over again. So Pilgrim's Progress I'd recommend as well.
We think about our students and we think, well, they're not ready for this or ready for that. They have to learn algebra, biology, physics, chemistry. I think they can handle the more complicated, we might refer to it, the complicated things of Scripture. And so let's not be afraid to share some good, heavy stuff with them and challenge them in that way.
Right. And that doesn't mean that we can't still have fun and we can't still be relatable to them. But
you bet.
I think many youth workers will find that once they go deeper with their students will not want to go back.
That's good. That's good. Well, Aaron, we've talked about it, kind of talked around it. You're with 10ofthose.com.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to share a little bit more with our listeners about that ministry. I had the opportunity to be at Sing. I believe it was the Sing of 2019 and just really kind of exposed to 10 of those with the bright yellow.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about the ministry.
Well, yeah, thank you. 10 of those was started in the UK about 15 years ago. And it got the name because at first, in order to kind of keep prices low, you were required to buy at least 10, so kind of a bulk pricing thing. But now, you can buy any quantity that you want, and we always say that still, the more that you buy, the cheaper that it gets. So we are all about getting accessible and affordable books out. But as I mentioned earlier, we really desire to see good books that keep to the Bible and point people to Jesus into the hands of as many readers as possible. So we handpick everything that we sell from across the Christian publishers, and we discount all of it so that more books are able to go out. We do have a website that I've mentioned several times, 10ofthose.com, and we also really focus on different events. So like you mentioned that we are that you ran into us at Sing when we were running the conference bookstore there. We do large events like that and others. but we also like to do smaller events. So maybe your church does a women's retreat each year. That's the kind of thing that we love to come to. Or maybe just on a Sunday morning, you would love your congregation to be impacted by seeing a lot of good books. And so we'll show up with an entire bookstore, just set up tables and bring all of the books and make a few recommendations, and then have the books available after your services are over. So that's the kind of thing that we love to do. We love to recommend good books. And you can always connect with us as well on social media. Our handle is 10 of those USA, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, of course. So yeah, I don't know what else you want me to tell you, but that's a little bit about 10 of those.
No, Aaron, that is great. I love hearing about the ministry. I love hearing about the origin, why it's even called 10 of those. I love hearing about a name. That's always fun. 10 of those is one of our sponsors and one of our friends for our Student Ministry Workers Retreat that'll be coming up on September 11th of 2021. And so they have a gift for you if you're one of the attendees there that'll be in your goodie bag. And so I'm excited to share that, and been so excited to have Aaron with us on the podcast today. Remember that we want to put good resources in front of our students, but we need to be building ourselves up, being a lifetime learner, and that involves reading. So don't be afraid of those books. Go to places like 10 of those and other resources and read and learn and grow. And we do all these things because student ministry matters.
Thanks for listening to the Student Ministry Matters podcast. Get connected at studentministrymatters.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Student Ministry Matters. Until next time, keep up the great work with your students, because the work matters.